Good morning, or good evening in my case. I'm Matt Driskill, editor of Asian Aviation Magazine and AsianAviation.com. Today, or tonight, as in my case, we're in conversation with Geoff Chick, Senior Vice President for Worldwide Service Network at Dassault Falcon Jet. He's based in the U.S. Welcome to the show, Geoff. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me, Matt, and good evening.
Thank you. I seem to be starting off all these in conversation episodes with the same question, the elephant in the room, COVID-19 pandemic. Your bio tells me that you're responsible for all aspects of the factory-owned authorized service center network worldwide for Dassault Falcon Jet. Kind of give us the big picture on, the industry, business aviation in general. I mean, is everybody grounded globally?
No, absolutely not. Even when we were at the valley of the pandemic, there was still a little bit of activity. But my office is right here in Teterboro, so I see the planes, I hear the planes, and I also see the stats from the airport. And we've definitely started to come up on the other side of this already. We're back up to about 35% of regular traffic movement here for jets already. So it's definitely trending in the right way.
When you say the traffic, is there any? Can you give us an idea of where it is? Is it domestic traffic or is there international traffic at all?
I see all types taking off. Everything from 8X, 7X, 2,900, the smaller Bombardier products, the larger Bombardier products, the larger and the smaller Gulfstream. It's absolutely everything.
Wow, it's interesting. I've been listening to a lot more webinars than I care to admit, and they all seem to happen at night in Singapore. The general consensus seems to be that owners who were chartering planes once various borders open and things like that, they will continue to charter their planes, and the owners who didn't charter are not likely to start. Do you find that to be true?
I think there's a dichotomy, Matt. I think that there is certainly for corporations that have plants around the U.S. and around the world, they are going to see more value in their flight departments because they need the safety of the social distancing, the disinfecting of the airplane, and the control of the number of passengers on the airplane. So I was on an interesting webinar on Friday where one flight department, and it wasn't even a Falcon operator, said that they're going to be flying more because they have to take people to various facilities, but they have to limit the number of passengers on the airplane. So they have to do the trip twice to get the same number of people to the facility. So that's really interesting. And the other thing is, because people want to keep their employees safe, they're making the corporate jets available to not just the C-suite, which is typical. They're making it to middle level management as well because they want to keep people safe. So those are good indicators for utilization increasing, actually. And of course, airlines to some of the smaller towns where they take a regional jet and now they can only put a handful of people in, it doesn't make money. They're just not going to go to some of these smaller towns, at least not for a while.
It's interesting to me what you said. I just want to follow up on that a little bit, where you mentioned that they have to make the same trip twice because I guess of social distancing rules. Will business jet travel, business aviation, everybody's been talking about new health protocols, and probably when I started flying internationally, I carried a little yellow card that showed I had certain vaccinations and things like that. And IATA, AAPA, a lot of the ICAO, a lot of the international organizations have been talking about this. I mean, our business jet operators, charter companies, people like that, do you think they'll start requiring some kind of health screening or health affidavit in order to charter a flight?
Very good question. I haven't heard anything specific to that yet, other than, again, some of the corporations are going to be doing things like temperature testing and a basic questionnaire before they let you on the airplane. So I'm sure that that's going to happen. Excuse me, I have a message popped up. Sorry about that. So, but in terms of a specific card, I don't see anything yet on the horizon.
Again, listening from all these multitude of webinars that have sprung up, it seems to be the consensus, and it's interesting based on what you said earlier. A lot of people thought the consensus was that small and medium-sized jets would probably return first, and then the international capable jets would return later. But you said earlier, just a minute ago, that you're seeing all kinds of flights going.
Yes, I don't know where they're going. I think a lot of that depends on the restrictions that the countries are putting in place. So you heard probably on the weekend Boris Johnson saying that most likely they're going to require all incoming air travelers to self-quarantine for 2 weeks upon arrival. If you're a businessman flying on a business jet, that really kind of destroys the value proposition a little bit. So it's going to vary country by country and also vary by timing. Some countries will open up sooner than others. Maybe we'll be early with a vaccine. All these things are factors, I think, in the international market.
Now, I asked another business jet operator about MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul during the downtime, during this lockdown when, obviously activity is way down. Is work being done, or have layoffs and furloughs and lockdowns, have they stopped MRO at all? Or I mean, you're in charge of the service network, so you're sitting in the catbird seat and being able to see what's going on. Can you tell us a little bit about the MRO activity?
Yeah, sure. So there were a couple of sites that we had in the network where the local restrictions essentially forced a temporary closing. And we also had one person that tested positive, so out of an abundance of caution, we shut a facility down for 2 weeks. But for the most part, we're now back up and running at almost full capacity at nearly every location in the network. And work is being done. The work that was already in the hangar is being completed as quickly as possible so people can get their planes back. And it's I won't say it's business as usual, but we're busy until the end of the first half of the year for sure.
Yeah, I hate to say this. This is one of these technical problems. I lost your photo there, Geoff. We lost your camera. But the good news is this happens all the time in other technology conferences. Can you see if you can get the camera back on?
Yeah, let's try that.
There you go.
At least we have no dogs barking in the background.
Well, and I've got the door locked, so there's no kids coming in or cats or anything either. So, and again, like I said, this is in conversation, so these things happen. And I was listening to an IATA conference the other day, and they were having problems. And that actually brings up a good question. The good thing about business jets is you can have a CEO and his top team, whether, if they're doing an IPO and they're doing a roadshow or they're doing a takeover or whatever, and they can be in 5 cities in one day and home for dinner with the wife and kids, or the husband and kids if the CEO is a woman. You have to, say these things. But now everybody's doing all of these teleconferences, the webinars, the Zoom meetings that are getting crashed by people. Will business jet travel, do you think it'll pick up as quick? I mean, because I've heard a lot of people say, well, you can get a lot done. The travel budget is an easy place to cut. And you can get a lot done by having this kind of online conversation. But that face-to-face, that handshake, that getting to know someone, that's really hard to replace. I mean, is there a time that you think that business travel will resume in some at some, I'm trying to think of the word, at some level where it actually pays?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think that Zoom and all these other online forums are good. It's great for, let's call it, the basics. There's still nothing that replaces the handshake, although we're not allowed to do that right now. I have to be in the elbow bump, I guess. But also there are things that have to be done that you can't do remotely. If you want to go and visit one of your facilities, you have to go there. I mean, I guess you can walk around with a camera and show this and that, but it's not going to replace actually being there in person. So, and we're most of us are social people, so we like to meet face to face, and that's where the real business gets done. So, at some point, we'll get back to some normalcy that we just don't know when.
You've got a view of the world being in charge of worldwide service for Dassault Falcon Jet. Let's talk about my neighborhood here in Asia. When I look at Flight Radar 24, I really don't see much activity in the business jet category. Am I missing something, or I mean, I think there may be some activity in China, but I'm not sure. Do you have any idea of what's going on in Asia?
It's a lighter market anyway. It's certainly not as dense in terms of business jets, so I'm not surprised to hear you say that. And again, it depends on the country itself in what kind of restrictions it had or has. That really has an effect on whether people can even fly. So for a while, no one was allowed to enter Malaysia. So that really hit the Malaysia market for a couple of weeks. So they're back up and running now. So I think that you're going to see a slow return to maybe not pre-COVID levels, but I think you'll start to see more on Flight Radar 24.
Tell us about the market. I mean, when I mean the market in Asia, I mean being able to buy a new machine. If I'm an owner and I've got a smaller machine, but I want to trade up. And again, I was listening to one of the webinars, and I heard that there's lots of shoppers out there, but there's not many deals being done. Are people looking to trade up?
I'm not a sales guy, but I think there's a couple of things. It's not the same market that we had in 2008, 2009 when values plummeted. I don't think we're going to see the same thing. There will be some deals to be had for sure. But the other thing is people that already have the planes, because of the reasons I said earlier, they're going to want to hang on to them. They want it because they want to use them. They need to go around and do their business. So I think there might be a bit of a scarcity of planes. In terms of trading up for newer airplanes, manufacturers have been more careful with their production schedules based on what happened in 2008, 2009. So there should not be a glut of white-tail airplanes. So there's definitely going to be deals to be had. Are they going to be so crazily attractive that people are going to start trading up left, right, and center? I don't think so, but there will be some good deals out there.
Yeah, I think the market's still going to be hurt by the recession, and the global economy is going to take a long time to recover from this. Let me move on to another thing. Dassault Falcon Jet, or Dassault, has been expanding its footprint in Asia for the last couple of years. You acquired ExecuJet, MRO Services Malaysia, which is growing, I understand. Can you give us an idea of what your plans are in Malaysia?
Yeah, so the Malaysian facility is often at full capacity, so we need to expand there, and we're in discussion with the Malaysia Airports Authority. We haven't made any formal commitments yet. We have some very good ideas as to what we want to do, and we're fully supported by the Airports Authority. So stay tuned on that. There might be something coming in the not too distant future, but yes, for sure, Malaysia is going to be a key hub for us. And as I said, today they're often busy, and of course they do not just Falcon, but they do other OEM products as well.
Let me follow up on that by asking a question because we did a story a while ago about Singapore versus Malaysia. Malaysia has room; it's got room to grow. Singapore doesn't. Singapore is probably higher up on the value chain in terms of services being able to be offered. Are places like Malaysia, are they catching up to Singapore? Does Singapore need to be worried about that?
I don't want to start a political debate here, but Malaysia really is very capable, and Sabang, which is where our facility is certainly an aviation center of excellence, and the government is serious about continuing to develop that area. So I don't know if I would say Singapore has anything to worry about specifically, but the region is getting busier, and Malaysia is an attractive place for people to get their aircraft maintained, and we are getting more business there.
And you've got ExecuJet MRO services in Australia. You got operations in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, as well as Wellington, New Zealand. How's the business there?
Yeah, it's been steady. Again, there's not a large fleet there, and they are multi-OEM, so that's good. But they're steady. They've had a decent first quarter, and we're not seeing any significant impact of the of COVID yet. But as you mentioned earlier, Matt, a lot depends on what our customers' reaction is to the new world post-COVID, the recession. We heard about the U.S. unemployment figures last week. The question is, how do our customers react to it, and how does the media talk about it? That will also influence us. So it remains to be seen. We're cautiously optimistic that by beginning of 2021 we'll definitely be coming very much on the upside of this. But it depends on how our customers react.
Kind of like your commercial cousins, Boeing and Airbus, business jet OEMs seem to see services and MROs the way forward. Do you think we'll see more consolidation in the industry with smaller players being taken over? I mean, you guys have been taking over a few other players. Is there going to be more consolidation in that area?
That remains to be seen. It's certainly not impossible. This type of environment is where you do see a higher number of mergers and acquisitions. We have nothing specific in mind right now for ourselves. I can't speak for the other OEMs or facilities, but anything could happen for sure, but not that I'm aware of right now.
Geoff, back to your neighborhood. I heard, again, on one of these webinars, there was still some activity in places like the Southeast Corridor between Florida and New York. Are you seeing activity elsewhere, and is it mainly charters or owners?
Again, we don't specifically track where the airplanes are going. For a while, there was no activity between New York, New Jersey, and Florida because Florida put restrictions in place specifically saying, okay, if you come in from those two locations, of course, we are at the epicenter of the pandemic here, then you have to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. So I'm sure the traffic from northeast to southeast at that point was very minimal. But then if we look at, for example, Georgia is partially opened up. There's a lot of good industry there. We have a lot of customers there. There's some good business jet activity there. So I imagine that is now heating up as a destination. And then, of course, we have people that have facilities in the heartlands, and I'm sure that there is traffic going there. And the typical traffic from right across the country into LA, San Francisco, Seattle, I'm sure that traffic is still happening, just at a lower level.
Now, I know you deal mainly with service and everything, but I'm curious. I'm sure you've got contacts across the industry. What about the jet card companies or the fractional ownership companies? Do you have any idea how they're doing?
I think they're hurting a little bit, but I think they're also adapting quite well. So I think maybe I believe I heard that one of them, I don't know which one it was, was making the minimum amount of hours that you have to buy lower so that it could attract more customers. And that's good for everyone. If they, not just them, if they can get people into a jet, make them feel safe and comfortable, people experience it for the first time, they get used to the efficiency, they might say, wow, you know, this is actually worth looking at in my corporation. If I'm flying business class, I don't want to do that anymore, at least not for a while. Maybe this is the way to go. And maybe they'll actually get busier. So it's hard to tell, but I think that they have adapted their policies to try and bring more people into biz jets that have never been into them, and that's good for all of us.
Geoff, you're in the middle of the action there at Teterboro. You know, New York's right across the river. But do you, and I'm sure you guys have had to adapt to everything. Is there any advice for your colleagues in Asia and elsewhere about how to weather this storm?
I think that we have to, if we all participate in these types of discussions and webinars and share ideas and behave as an industry as opposed to competitors, of course we are competitors to a degree, I think we'll find some innovations that we can share with each other that can help us get through this. It's not all doom and gloom. And in fact, a webinar I attended a couple of weeks back showed that the GDP for Asia was going to bounce back quicker and stronger than North America and Europe. So for Asia in particular, I think that there is a need for people to get back to business. And as long as there's not a second outbreak, I think that'll happen quicker than it will in North America and Europe.
And finally, I try to end these conversations by asking if there's a bright spot to this whole thing that's affecting everybody around the world. We don't, obviously, people are dying, people are losing their jobs. This is a horrible, terrible situation. But is there anything positive, or is there a bright spot that we can look at for the business aviation industry?
Well, I think there is, because first of all, business aviation has been sustaining some critical activities during this pandemic. So, for example, Dassault has been using 2 of its airplanes for various missions in France, moving patients, doctors, and equipment around. We converted a Falcon 900 into a freighter so we can move supplies. So there are bright spots because there are opportunities to keep doing that. And that is also an opportunity for the public to see, okay, number one, you're still flying, you're not afraid to fly. Number two, you're not just carrying the rich folks around. You're doing some good stuff for the rest of the people. So I think that is a bright spot. It gives us a chance to enhance our image. And when we look at that, and then we look at the fact that commercial air travel is going to be particularly difficult. I mean, 95% of the fleet over here is parked. I think that it makes us look more attractive. And sometimes we take a beating as an industry. I think this will help change that perception a little bit. And as an industry, we should capitalize on that.
Geoff Chick, Senior Vice President for Worldwide Service Network at Dassault Falcon Jet. Thanks for joining me in conversation.
Matt, thank you so much for having me. Have a great evening.